morning, everyone, and welcome to you, Chief Constable, and your team to our October meeting in public. Welcome also to anyone joining us online, and thank you for your interest in the work of the Northern Ireland Policing Board and indeed in policing. We're also very pleased to welcome the Information Commissioner, John Edwards, who has very helpfully agreed to attend today to brief us on the key findings of his investigation on the data breach. The data breach was a critical incident that had serious reverberations within and outside of the PSNI. The remedial actions of the PSNI in response to the breach is an issue that has featured on our agenda and discussions over the past 13 months. And in the course of that period, they remain under scrutiny by the board even now. So the findings from your investigation mark a further important development, and I know that members have some questions. I also am aware that you, John, are limited in time, so I'll hand over to you, Commissioner, to make some opening remarks, and we can then take some questions. And also, if you have anything to add, Chief Constable, please feel free to do so. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, for the opportunity to appear here. I don't know if any of you heard my interview on radio this morning, but I was challenged by an interviewer to say, well, no one in this organisation has been held to account, meaning no one's been fired. And I had to explain, look, accountability comes in many forms, and the Chief Constable will later today be sitting in front of the Northern Ireland Policing Board, and that is a principal form of accountability in this community. I am a regulator, the Information Commissioner. It is my task to administer the UK General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act to ensure that those entrusted with personal data of people of the United Kingdom can expect that data to be kept safely and securely and not misused. And sadly, the Police Service of Northern Ireland failed in that responsibility in relation to the full list of the staff and commissioned and non-commissioned staff of the organisation, and the full list was published online. Our job as the regulator was to examine the circumstances under which that occurred, because there can be organisations which have all the expected measures in place and yet still mishaps occur. The obligation that I'm there to administer is to ensure that all reasonable steps have been taken to protect personal data. So we looked at the policies, the procedures, the training. We looked at the way in which this particular event occurred. It was in response to a Freedom of Information request about aspects of the staffing makeup. A spreadsheet was uploaded to a public-facing site that facilitates the making of Freedom of Information requests. That spreadsheet contained in a concealed form a full list of the staff's name, rank, the office that they were associated with, and their number. This is a not unknown problem. My home jurisdiction of New Zealand, this kind of event was a bane because it has happened on a number of occasions, both in my previous role and in the current job. We have issued instructions about how to deal with the risks associated with uploading spreadsheets containing personal data. On examination and investigation, we found that there were absent policies, insufficient training, and insufficient checks, to the degree that we felt we had no option but to conclude that the PSNI had failed in its responsibilities to protect that data. We published in May a notice of intention to issue an enforcement notice, setting out the steps that we would require PSNI to take to bring itself into conformance with the law and to avoid the recurrence of a similar event in future. We also published an intention to fine the PSNI £750,000, and I'm happy to discuss how we came to that figure in a moment. But we invited representations from PSNI. I need to just pause and recognise that from the very start, from the initial notification by PSNI to our office, as it was obliged to do, we have had full cooperation, we've had open books, we have seen no defensiveness, we have seen a constructive engagement and a willingness to learn and put things right. To the extent that when I met with Chief Constable in May and explained that we would be issuing these notices, he asked what was going to be in the enforcement notice, what we were asking of him. He said, I'm going to do that as a priority. Now, I hear that a lot, and sometimes in the glare of the lights and the cameras, these promises are made and other priorities intrude. I was very pleased and reassured to find that in the period that we gave for representations, PSNI had implemented each of the recommendations that we'd made, providing, I think, a considerable degree of reassurance to the community and to the staff that the organisation has learned from this and that they have redoubled efforts to keep personal information safe. As a result of the actions taken by PSNI, I have not felt it necessary to proceed with issuing an enforcement notice. We have, however, felt obliged to proceed with the fine. We considered the representations made by PSNI, particularly noting the straitened financial circumstances it finds itself in, and particularly conscious of a desire on my part not to withdraw essential services and resources from an already strained organisation, but also conscious of the needs of the community and those wronged by the errors, and the will of Parliament, which has said to me, for the most egregious cases, there is the option of issuing a monetary penalty. As a result, we decided not to reduce the penalty from the amount signalled in May. Our assessment included the judgment that if we had not been dealing with a public sector authority with limited finances, an organisation which, when we issue a fine, we are taking money away from the community. If it had been a private organisation, the fine would have been in the region of £5.6 million. So that puts in context for you some of the considerations that we've taken into account. But I think the public demands recognition of the seriousness of an event like this. I have been asked where this matter rates in the scale of breaches that we've seen in the public sector. In my time in this job and in my previous job, this has to be right at the edge of the most serious. There's a considerable quantum involved, that's nearly 10,000 people, and the impact on those individuals, on many of them, has been profound, and you will see in the statements that we've issued some testimony from those who've felt no option but to leave the service and go give away a career that they loved, people who have felt in fear for their own personal security, people whose children have been waking with nightmares of being attacked as a result of the exposure of information which many took considerable steps to conceal. So that's the background and the conclusion. I would like to finish on a positive note that, as I say, I think we conclude this matter confident that significant improvements have been made and the public can be reassured that PSNI does take its obligations in relation to personal data very seriously and has learned from this episode and improved the safeguards around personal data.
Chief Constable.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, John. I want to start really by just addressing the issue of the fine of £750,000, which of course is a significant sum of money with regards to last August data breach. That's something that I wouldn't have wanted. However, the seriousness of last year's data breach is well understood by everybody here, not least of which by myself. The impact on our staff will never be forgotten and will not be underestimated. And as I've said before, this should be a lesson to every organisation, both in policing and beyond. The majority of the cost of that fine, £610,000, was accounted for against last year's budget. A further £140,000 will now be charged against our budget in the current financial year. Although the ICO found it necessary to fine the organisation, as John's mentioned, I'm very pleased that they've taken the decision not to issue an enforcement notice. That decision is as a direct result of the huge amount of work that we've done in evidencing to the ICO that we've implemented the changes recommended to improve the security of personnel information in the PSNI, in particular when responding to freedom of information requests. The Commissioner, as he's mentioned this morning, actually informed me that promises are often made to undertake remedial work after a data breach has occurred, but all too often these are not sufficiently followed through after the story has calmed down. But in this case of the PSNI, the issues were resolutely focused upon and addressed in the interests of everybody, not least of which our staff. As I've made clear, the impact of the data loss that it's had on our officers and staff can never be understated, and as a result of this announcement, it will once again be in the forefront of their minds. As an organisation, we're in an entirely different place from where we were last August, and we've continued to work to devalue the compromised data set. We've also provided significant crime prevention advice to our officers and our staff and their families by our online tools, advice clinics and home visits, and through the Universal Offer for Security, we funded support for 90% of our staff around their own security. I do want to personally thank the ICO and the Commissioner for the professionalism, dedication and approach to this independent examination of the circumstances behind the data breach. And to reassure everybody, we'll continue to progress the recommendations made by the ICO and also the recommendations made by the already referred to this morning independent review team. We'll ensure that information security and data protection matters are afforded the support and attention they critically deserve. And we look forward to this matter being concluded with the litigation that again has already been mentioned this morning, and for the organisation to move forward. I think that's all I wish to say, Chair, on that particular issue, but also if there's any questions of me on that issue, I'm happy to take them.